Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Kimchi Kids podcast. I'm Thomas.
I'm Andy. Today we had the pleasure of enjoying some coffee from Coffee Lab and Roasters in Lakeview, owned by Helen and Peter, and also the refreshing Mountain Valley water. Today we had an amazing conversation with none other than the Prince of Pizza, the food connoisseur, the Hungry Hound himself, Steve Dolinsky.
Today we dive into his impact and influence on the Chicago food scene, his upbringing, and his love of corn, and his obsession with pizza. This episode is not sponsored yet. If you're out there, we're waiting.
We're waiting.
It is, however, produced by 1903. Please enjoy the show.
Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of Kimchi Kids podcast. We're here with our next guest, food reporter for 17 years for Chicago ABC 7 News, the Hungry Hound, recipient of 13 James Beard Awards, and author of his most recent work, Pizza City, USA. Welcome to the show, everybody. Steve Dolinsky.
Yes.
Great to be here. Thank you, Kimchi Kids. Are we talking daikon? Or are we talking Napa?
Oh,
When you say kimchi.
All of the above.
all of the above.
All right.
Absolutely.
So make sure. All right.
All vegetables.
Yes. Anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But some people have preferences, don't they? Like
Yeah. Oh, that's a great. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Andy, what's your favorite
even
kimchi?
in kimchi, we have preferences, whether it's fresh or
super aged,
Yeah.
right? The super fermented stuff, which
Yeah.
you end up cooking a lot of times, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. All our kimchi stew is made from like aged kimchi.
Yeah. No, I remember Bill Kim was like one of the first times we did a kimchi story, and he was like, "We're gonna just do a super fresh young kimchi." I was like, "Oh God, it was so good." And then I got into gochugaru, and I went down that rabbit hole and started shopping at was it not the H Mart? Jungbu,
Yeah, Chungbu, we get a lot of our stuff from Chungbu, but his mom actually uses a very specific brand of gochugaru.
Oh.
Which are
It gets even
Korean
crazier.
chili flakes.
Right.
People don't realize this about me. I'm sure you'll ask me this question later, but my favorite food is not pizza.
No.
It is Korean.
Wow.
I mean, when pressed, I always go for Korean. Like, that's like my birthday dinner is Korean. We went to, what's the place up on California? Gogi.
Kogi. Kogi.
Yeah, that was like my birthday dinner a couple years ago, and then it was Perilla, and it was
lot
like,
of history
it's like a
over
lot. It's just my jam. I think I was Korean in another life, for sure.
Awesome.
That's funny you say that because actually I'm gonna go right into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so we have a little shop in the Thompson Center called City Rock, and we were just my brother and I opened the shop, just trying to support our family, and hopefully open more restaurants in the future. One day, Steve Dolinsky was in line. I'm just like, what is this man doing here?
Yeah.
And then, luckily somehow we were fortunate enough to be on the Hungry Hound for an episode. What led you to not only just come into our line, but decide to feature us on your show?
Well, first of all, it was a block from the office. It was very convenient from ABC 7, and I was hungry.
Yes.
No, but I heard that there was a Korean concept, and I'm always interested. I've talked about, a little fast casual place like the BB Bops and the K-Fires, and like, I'm always interested in how can you make Korean fast casual?
Right.
What are they doing? And I'm just always curious about stuff going on in Chicago, and so, I like a good bowl of rice and carby like the next guy. So I was just checking it out, and that's kind of what I do, right? Yeah. I kind of look around, like I'm the guy who's craning his neck and looking down the street when I'm driving down, looking at awnings and what looks interesting. And so I wanted to just check it out, and I figured there's a ton of people, this is pre-COVID obviously, who are eating downtown looking for something for lunch, don't want to do Sbarro and fast food stuff, and I just loved it. I was so impressed with how you guys were making everything, you're cooking everything, you're marinating everything. I mean, you're doing it the right way. Yeah. So that's how it ends up on TV. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's like I go, I order, I pay, I eat, I decide, do I want to do something? I call you back up. I'm going to come back with the camera in a week. That's how it works.
Yeah. I mean, it's very simple for you, but it was, and I can say this for a lot of small businesses.
Right.
I think extremely impactful.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
to
absolutely.
the business.
That's great to hear.
I don't know if you know that or not.
No, I do. No, I've heard that. I mean, that's awesome. Again, they have a huge audience. You know, a lot of people watch Seven.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the future too, because there's a pretty good chance I'm going to end up at another station.
Oh, really?
In Chicago at some
Oh.
point. Yeah, I've been
Heard that here first.
Yeah, is that are people hearing that for the first time?
Yeah, I'm having conversations with folks.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
Awesome.
I think it's probably going to happen. I don't know for sure, but I think it will happen soon.
Wow.
But
Just can't stay away.
so I liked, and I like making an impact. Like you say, you do a story and you work hard on it, and you hope that it makes an impact, and then you get a call a week later and they say, we were just slammed, and now they've got built-in customers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, we literally will look at our statistics from however, Yelp or Instagram or Google, and you see the Saturday morning that it launches, the following Monday it just spikes.
Wow.
It's insane.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that happened at Perilla as well.
Yeah.
When you did the fire chickens.
Yeah,
you did a bunch of Korean restaurants.
Yeah.
But yeah, same thing. We
Cool.
just it's crazy what you do.
That's
So
great.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So we know you're from Minnesota. But we were wondering if you wanted to just shed a little light, a little bit brief history on where you came from and how you got into food, how you got here to Chicago, and
Yeah. So I grew up in a kosher home in St. Cloud, Minnesota, actually, an hour north of Minneapolis. My dad was in the scrap business, as was his father, which is what Jews did in the 1920s when you didn't speak any English. You were a scrap hauler. You hauled junk. And so my grandfather came over from Russia, Poland, and then my dad went into the business. And so we were in this small town, and because my dad had met my mom in Minneapolis, she kept kosher. So no pork, no shellfish, no mixing milk and meat, which is easier in Minneapolis where there's about 25,000, 30,000 Jews, but in St. Cloud there were like 10 families.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it really was, when I meet people who are like fish out of water, like, Chandra Ram, friend of, Chandra, right? She was the editor of Plate, Indian American, but grew up in like North Carolina.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or Ji Suki, who also I think grew up in North Carolina. You really fish out of water. I relate to that story
got it.
because we would wait for the Greyhound bus to come from Minneapolis with all the kosher food on it.
Wow.
So
Oh
we
my
get a freezer in our basement full of Empire frozen chickens because we could only eat kosher meat.
Yeah.
So that was tricky growing up in St. Cloud, and food was not a big deal. A lot of these people in the food industry I've met over the years are like, I remember my mother's apron strings, and she would make Sunday gravy for 4 hours. Like, I don't have any of those stories.
Yeah.
My mom was like literally making stuff in the microwave. That was my childhood. So I think the turning point for me was my brother's girlfriend who became his wife. She was from Australia, from Tasmania. Okay. And she was a world traveler, backpacker, really loved food, loved culture. They loved to experiment. And so when I'd go to his apartment, and he's 9 years older than I was, so I would go there, they would be baking and cooking and, making Szechuan shrimp and trying to make bagels and trying to do all kinds of weird stuff. And so that was my exposure. She had a series of great cookbooks called the Australian Women's Home Weekly.
Oh, wow.
Which are like thick food magazines, but they were cookbooks. And they had pictures. Everything was in grams, of course. It was all, from Australia. But my first job out of college, I was working in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan in television. I relied on these books. And I remember specifically going to a store and asking for fresh basil. And they looked at me like I was crazy. This is Upper Peninsula, Michigan, 1990. Yeah. They're like, well, we've got lots of basil in the jars over there, but they didn't have anything fresh.
Wow.
So this was kind of the early, so I was like reading Gourmet, I'm reading Bon App, I'm reading Food and Wine, really excited about food.
You didn't have a Whole Foods down the street?
Didn't have a Whole Foods. No, nothing. It was really, it was like venison. It was like deer hunting and really
awesome.
upper North Woods stuff. So that kind of turned me on to food.
Yeah.
And then I remember, even when I was 22, living in the Upper Peninsula, I found a place 50 miles away, a Thai place. It was a Thai woman and her Caucasian husband. I think they met maybe in the service or something.
Yeah.
And he was over there. There's a little tiny place in Menominee or Marinette, Wisconsin, Michigan, right on the border. And I would drive down there once a week for Thai food. And that was 50 miles away because I loved, going to find Thai food. So
that's awesome.
The bug caught me early.
Yeah, I've noticed you have a fascination or love for a lot of Asian cuisines. Why is that? Where does that come from?
My mother-in-law gave me so much shit about when I first started ABC. She's like, why all the Asian food? We live in Wilmette, but why all the Asian food?
Yes.
I'm just fascinated by it. I didn't grow up with it,
Yeah.
you know. I grew up with a lot of lamb chops and tuna casserole and pasta. And so it was so foreign and exotic and just interesting. And I just, you know, then as I got older and my palate got more sophisticated, I love the flavors. I love the sweet, the spicy, the salty. I fell in love with Thai food hard when I first moved to Chicago. I never had that kind of complexity to dishes. I always thought, oh, Thai is spicy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. It's so much more complex than that.
Sour.
Sour, and then that was sort of the gateway to Korean for me, which was, you know, that spicy sweet, and then that fermented funk.
Yeah.
That's what I loved, and then also the textures on top of that, like the crunch and the soft, and so. To me, it was just like every time I would experience something, it was like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. I'm opening up all these new synapses in my brain that I never had as a kid. And so I think I came to it late in life, but I really, I get excited about it because it's a great story as a reporter. You see someone like, oh, they're from Taiwan and they're, you know, redoing the buns that they did when they were a kid or something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's a lot of it is out of the box for me. You guys grew up with it. You know, you had this cooking in your families, and so it's like all about part of your childhood when you're cooking something. For me, it's just like opening up a whole new world, and it's like I want to tell other people about this who maybe didn't have it like I didn't as a kid too.
No, I think for me too, I was only exposed to it, as far as Asian food goes, Korean food, like my whole life. So, but even now, I only been to Korea one time in my life, and
Same, we're equal,
there you go.
which is a shame.
But like the time that I went, which was a couple years ago, I had the same kind of experience. Like, oh my God, like, why haven't I had this yet, or why haven't I tried this yet, or even things that we have had here in the States. It's so different out there. Even like, even just the kimchi, right? Like, it's not only they give it to you in like whole pots. There was a restaurant I went to. They gave me a third pan of kimchi. That's 6 quarts of kimchi at the table, and it was a 2-top table. But it's I'm still experiencing those things. You know, even with our own cuisine.
Yeah.
So you get as excited as I do then when you see something new. You learn like, okay, like why aren't there mung bean pancakes like at Dangdaemun Market? You know, here somewhere because they're awesome.
No, for
but
sure.
nobody's making those.
Yeah.
Did you see the street eats on the chef's table? That woman who's making the incredible.
So that's so funny because I actually have pictures not of her but like of that, just like that area, and I think if I look through it closely,
the kalguksu.
she's definitely there.
Okay.
But we went through there. They're just like cutting it to order.
Yeah.
Just like
Don't you think there would be a demand here if people were making it the right way?
Yeah, I people love noodles. I mean, it's something Tom and I talk about.
I'm passionately obsessed with noodles. So I gotta ask though. So I mean, so you mentioned you grew up kosher. Was like, was there the first time you stepped out of that box? Was that kind of, what was that moment like for you? Was it a challenging thing for you, or were you excited about it? You're like,
there's a
feel guilty.
No, I did feel guilty because that's what we do in our culture was like guilt. But the funny thing is there is a Chicago connection to this experience because so my brother passed away several years ago, but his college roommate was Mitch Einhorn, who was the founder of Lush Wine and Spirits and the Twisted Spoke.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
And Mitch was from, I think, Homewood Flossmoor, and like here's my brother from St. Cloud, Minnesota. They're at Denver University.
Yeah.
And there's this big, crazy, loud, wild guy named Mitch, my brother's roommates with. And, fast forward 20, 30 years, Mitch is now, he's running Twisted Spoke. But back in the day when they came to visit, I mean, this must have been, I was probably 8 or 9, so mid-70s, late 70s. They came to St. Cloud to visit, and we went to a Chinese restaurant together, and Mitch ordered sweet and sour pork.
Yeah.
Because he grew up, he's Jewish, but he's like, whatever, he eats everything. And Mitch tells me to this day, he's like, I remember the time we were there, and, your parents weren't looking or something, and you tried my sweet and sour pork, and your eyes lit up like, holy shit, what is this? So Mitch was there at the beginning, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
I mean, we still stay in touch, but that was when it happened. I was probably
That's
like 9
so
or
funny.
10.
Does he know this? Does he know this story that he's the reason that you broke kosher?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
That's hilarious.
I broke my chair. Yeah, he was there. He helped break it. It was unbelievable, though. I mean, it was really like an epiphany for me.
Yeah.
Because we'd never had anything close. I mean, the closest we got was maybe pepperoni on a pizza from Domino's. That I remember I had to wait until I was in high school to convince my mom to let me bring it in the house. Oh, wow. And even then, we had to have it on paper plates. It couldn't touch any of the regular plates.
How did she feel that you were
How does she feel?
breaking kosher.
She had a hard time with it. I mean, and it got to the point where on my 40th birthday, she came to town, and we used to have an annual pig roast in my alley called the Pig and Pinot, and we had the Cajachina boxes.
Yeah.
And so that was like the ultimate slap in the face.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to come for your birthday celebration, but on Sunday for your barbecue, I'm going to go home.
Oh.
She didn't want to stay and watch it.
Wow.
So it was a little hard because it is breaking a tradition in our family for sure. It ends, with me, and my kids don't keep kosher. They're not, they eat pork, they eat everything.
Oh, okay. Got
So
it.
it's really kind of sad.
It's kind of like how my parents reacted when I decided to start cooking.
Because that didn't have the prestige or the
Yeah,
it wasn't a profession that was honored.
They said it was for bums.
Yeah. But that wasn't the first generation. I mean, a lot of people were like that too. But I think these days this generation can prove that there is prestige to it. It does.
Oh, for sure.
It's a real business.
Yeah,
and
I think that's with anything almost, right? A lot of anything you go into, like if you take it serious enough or take it far enough, like you can get prestige in whatever you do.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We got to dive into that. I feel like, for a lot of Chicagoans that are familiar with who you are, I think everybody has this this take that like, oh, he's got this amazing job. He gets to go and eat food and highlight people. But it wasn't always like that, right? In the beginning, like there's some, like anything that we've ever done, there's like some challenging times, and building that. I don't think that's the story that most people like kind of gravitate towards right away. They think of you and they're like, he's got this amazing success as the Hungry Hound and all of
They only see the end result.
positive things. What were some of the early challenges like going into food reporting at that time in the society?
The hardest part was, so this all started before ABC7 at the Good Eating Show at CLTV.
Got it.
So I was a news reporter at CLTV. I came here in 92, 93, did it for 2 years, hated it because it was all hard news, but had always loved food and travel and learning about food, as we talked about earlier. And so when this opportunity came up, they were going to be launching a weekly cable version of the Trib's weekly food section, and they were changing the name from Food Guide, and it came out on Thursdays, to Good Eating, and it came out on Wednesdays. Could you produce this show for us? We already have a host, the weather guy, but could you produce the show? And I said, well, sure, I'm happy to go off air as a reporter. I don't need to be on camera all the time. I'll go back and produce it because I love food.
Yeah.
So I worked with the Tribune's food staff. That was very difficult because they were very resistant. They did not get television. They did not want to do TV. They didn't want to be on TV. Yeah. But this was like Bill Rice, who was the food and wine columnist, who sadly passed away several years ago, and Pat Daly and Steve, forgot his last name, but a lot of good, and Carol Haddix was the editor back then. Yeah. And so my job was to create a 30-minute show based on that food section. And I'd get the food sections probably a month in advance so I could see what was coming. But I had to produce and edit a lot of the stuff myself because that's what my expertise was. But it was very challenging, like going out to a restaurant, Sean McLean at Trio, can I come into your kitchen and do a feature on something? Now, a lot of times they would say, well, who are you? And why should I let you in? But again, having the calling card and the cachet of Tribune, and saying I'm representing the Tribune, and I really just want to highlight what you're doing. Well, as you know, as a chef, and you're working hard to make it, to get the word out. Any publicity like that's going to be good.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And so they all were happy to have us come in. And then, of course, while I was there, I took advantage of saying, well, what is a brunoise? Well, what is a chiffonade?
Yeah.
Well, why are you using that kind of knife? Well, And so it was sort of my MBA in food. I didn't go to culinary school, but I got 8 years of doing 52 shows a year to ask people questions. Yeah. And from any from high end to low end to ethnic to immigrant to whatever.
Right.
And because the Tribune covered everything, so that was my MBA in food. Wow. And it really was never that much of a challenge to get people to let us in, but it was a challenge to having people take us seriously, I think, and journalists take me seriously because I didn't go to culinary school and I had only been covering food for a year or two. But after 8 years of that, when I shopped myself around as a food reporter, all the other stations in town were like, yeah, we know who you are and we can see that you know what you're talking about, and so you have more credibility.
Got it. So that must have been just an awesome journey, though. And
it was so great. I mean, you think you're getting paid to learn. Yeah. Basically, they're paying you to sort of spend time every day, every week, learning what this craft is, right? And being able to ask the questions because and then also reading at the same time, like reading MFK Fisher, reading R.W. Apple, reading Richmond, reading all those guys, and reading and devouring every magazine, and Gourmet and Bon App. This is back when Ruth Reichel was editing Gourmet, and so really great stuff.
What is I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some amazing highlights and low points in that rich history of your career. What is like? Let's start off with like, what's the worst experience you ever had? I mean, if there was.
Well, I got to say it was not great with the Graham Elliott stuff.
Oh, really?
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember Graham. I mean,
So
Chicago Avenue and was like his flagship store, right?
Yeah, and I so I had this kind of goes back. I had a really bad experience at Trotter's.
Really?
I had a friend in town, a food guy from Toronto, and we went to Trotter's for dinner, and it was awful. He was there. We saw him back in the kitchen.
Yeah.
We went upstairs, I remember. And did you guys ever eat at Trotter's?
I staged there for a weekend before I started cooking.
And I felt so bad. Part of the problem is I got to give sort of some context. So my brother suffered a heart attack at 50 and died. And so I was super, super depressed and down about all this stuff, but still doing my job. And took this guy to dinner, and we spent like $500, and it was just, they were phoning it in. They clearly were phoning it in. And I feel bad years later because I'm friendly with Matthias Mergis, and I know Matthias was really the CDC there, right, for 14 years.
Wow.
And he's a super talented guy. And so I had this awful experience, and I kind of went off about it publicly. I said, for $500, I'd fly to New York and I'd go to Momofuku or something.
Right.
So 9 months later, I'm having lunch at Graham Elliott's place. Is it GB or the Bistro? Well, the one on Randolph.
Yeah.
And we have a course. And then the host comes over, the manager comes over and says, "I'm really sorry about this, but I have to ask you to leave."
Oh my God! What the
and
fuck?
I said, "What the fuck?"
Really? That's crazy.
I said, "Chef isn't here, but I've been told to ask you to leave." I said, "Okay." So I go outside and I tweet. And this is the problem that the low points where I was tweeting too much.
Yeah.
And, just asked to leave, Graham Elliott, real classy. And then he went off on this thing like, I can't allow anybody who was so disrespectful to Trotter, to my mentor, to dine in my restaurant.
Wow.
So I said, when I talked to a couple people in the industry about it, I said, well, was I right? Was I wrong? Where's the line here?
Yeah.
They said, listen, if you're going to be asked to leave, they should ask you to leave before you sit down.
Right.
It's within their right to not serve you if they don't want to, but don't seat you and then start taking your order and then ask you to leave mid-meal. So, because I wasn't doing anything I wasn't like yelling, and I wasn't drunk and getting upset. Yeah. I was just having lunch. So this led to a whole brouhaha, and then I remember Jeff Gordonier from the New York Times reached out. He wanted a quote from me, and I'm like, I'm not talking about this.
Oh wow!
I wrote a response on my website about it a day or two later, and kind of here's the background about this to explain it all. But it was an awkward time.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you about Charlie Trotter. Well, you did a couple shoots with him, didn't you?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, he was great to me at one point, like in 2000. We did, it's actually on my YouTube, this 5th anniversary show for Good Eating. Yeah. We did a lunch at the Ritz-Carlton, and Sarah Stegner made lunch for the best chefs of Chicago. And it's kind of a funny thing to look at, like Francois Kwakudango from Spago is there, and Erwin Drexler is there, and Jimmy Banos. So senior, right? Senior. And Trotter co-hosted the show with me. And was doing, faux live shots from the kitchen with Sarah. It was great.
Yeah.
And then, it was sort of publicly known. He kind of got he went a little bit off the handle a little bit. It might have been medication, might have been his illness, whatever. And then he really turned on me when I was interviewing Fergus Henderson from St. John in London. He was in town doing a lunch promotion for his book, Nose to Tail. Was it called Nose to Tail?
Oh, yeah. This was just a few years ago.
Oh, it was a while ago. Well, I mean,
because I saw Fergus Henderson right in the where is that? Right across from where Publican is.
Yeah. But this was a lunch at Trotter's.
Okay.
So it was a while ago.
Yeah.
And he was promoting the American version of the book, and so we'd made arrangements to do the podcast interview ahead of time. Trotter knew this. Well, it was turning into a 3-hour lunch. And it was a weekday. People have to go to work. And so I pulled him aside in the break before dessert, pulled him downstairs, did the interview with him. I could see Trotter pacing out of the corner of my eye.
Oh, wow.
I say, "Thank you very much, Chef." He goes back upstairs. Trotter just rips me a new one. "How could you do this? This wasn't even live. You could have waited. I can't believe you did this during lunch. Fuck you. Get out of here." I'm like, okay. So that was that. But then when the funny thing was I went to go talk to another well-known chef in town after that. I had an appointment that afternoon. And I said, you tell me, was I wrong? Like, I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. He's like, no. He's like, I've done lunches at Danielle in New York to promote books and promote things, and we do it in 2 hours. There's no reason to take people 3 hours plus during a lunch break or during a lunch day. So he's like, no, they should have done it quicker. They didn't have to do speeches in between each course and take people's whole day hostage. So I said, okay, well, that makes me feel a little better. But it was, from that point on, it was very awkward with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people would say, oh, then you're taking revenge on him by ripping him a new one, by saying your dinner was so terrible. But no, it was. I mean, my friend from Toronto was like, what is the deal here? You know,
Right.
so why are we having molten chocolate cake for dessert?
Wow. Yeah.
We saw that on Chef,
Yeah.
the movie.
But I'm sure with that comes some amazing experiences. What's one that really stands out to you where you're just like, this was probably one of the most memorable moments we had on the show?
Oh, on the show. I was going to say in life. But related to the show. But, well, in TV-wise, you mean? Or
I mean, you could. How about in just life? I mean, it doesn't have to be specific towards the show.
Well, I mean, because of the show and because of the connections to the show, I would say having dinner at Tempuramatsu in Kyoto was for sure top meal, if not top 2 of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
And I actually told Mike Gebert about it from Fooditor, and he ended up going with his family like a year or so later. Just one of those magical experiences. It was actually, the place is written about in Rice Noodle Fish, which is it Matt Goulding's book from Roads and Kingdoms? Father-son, the father passed away, Matsuno-san, but his son Toshio now runs it. And Toshio had done I think it was a stage with Takashi Yagahashi here when he had Takashi.
Oh, wow.
Years ago. So they were friends. And so my family and I were traveling in Kyoto. We met up with Takashi's family because they were there for spring break. Also, we had dinner at this place, and it was exactly what you want, like that sort of Japanese moment where you're sitting at a counter, that was carved from a tree probably. There's maybe 5 or 6 guys behind the counter. They're just cooking for you. Here's the spiny lobster. We're going to make this into a white miso for you. Here's this block of toro. We're going to slice off and do some hand rolls for you. They're going to wave the nori over the little bichotan, to warm it a little bit. And all this kind of stuff happening for you, and just all seamless and no pressure, and really you feel like it's casual, but it's probably $150, $200 a head. But like exactly how you want to eat, like where you want to eat. It's sort of just outside of Kyoto, near the river, in an old home. The whole experience from the moment you walk in to where they greet you and this sort of hospitality, this moto tenashi, to when they say goodbye and they come outside and they're bowing until the car is out of sight. It's just like,
That's
wow.
So cool.
It's just like that kind of hospitality doesn't exist in America.
No.
That's true.
But the food was just, I mean, I can still remember what we had, 8 years later.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's because it's not profitable in America. That's why it doesn't work.
But then, I feel like that's what's so beautiful about that story you just shared, right? It's like all of the other things that made that experience such a memorable one, right? It wasn't just that bite of food. It was all of that, everything, the ambiance, the movements, the pace, the comfort, all of that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Total hospitality. That's the Japanese culture, I think, and that's what's such an important part why people in the food industry need to go to Japan at some point in their life to experience that. Whether it's in the city or the country, but just being able to experience that, like, don't even think about tipping.
Right.
Like I tried to give the bag guy in the hotel a couple of yen, and he's like, forget it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really a different approach.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to be like bowing out to Uber drivers like from moving forward at Perilla now. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to now. I mean, you released a book. When did the book come out?
Well, the first book, Pizza City, came out a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, but The Ultimate Chicago Pizza Guide is coming out October 15th.
Oh, awesome.
Amazing.
So much more expanded than the first one, 50 new or updated places that weren't in the first book.
Yeah.
Most of them are pandemic related, so we talk about the third wave of pizza in Chicago. The first wave was post-war, mid-40s. Second wave was 71.
Yeah.
And then the third wave was probably 2 years before the pandemic.
So how has pizza evolved through all the waves?
Well, we've gotten more artisan. We've gotten more chefs who decided they don't want to do 18-course tasting menus, but they're sort of rooted in the skills of a high-end kitchen, and they know how to source great ingredients, but they're going to apply it to pizza.
Yeah.
So
bread making now,
bread
right?
making, right. So high hydration, long fermentation, those are obviously the two keys.
Yeah.
But then even just sourcing ingredients, Robert Garvey going to Smoking Goose to get duck prosciutto from Indianapolis. Noah Sandoval doing a 5-day ferment, at Pizza Friendly Pizza because he talked to John Arena, because I connected him to John because he didn't know what he was doing with the Sicilian. I mean, having the confidence to tell a Michelin star, two or three Michelin, two Michelin and Oriole.
Just two.
The pizza doesn't look good.
No.
You need to talk to the guru in Las Vegas, John Arena, and he helped him work it out. He got different flour, different fermentation. They've got a whole dough room now at Pizza Friendly Pizza.
Oh, wow.
But those are the kind of connections I like being able to make happen.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the pizza scene, and just more of an artisan approach to pizza. People were asking me a couple years ago, what is artisan? What are you talking about? Like, well, it's not neo-Neapolitan. That just implies sort of a riff on a wood fire. Artisan really implies a bread baker's approach, like Bungalow by Middlebrow. Jess Galley, who came from the mill in San Francisco, where bread is such an important part of the culture, applying that to pizza. That hadn't really happened before.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize this, and we're fortunate enough. We've got a close friend that does pizza out in Oakland, and I really learned through him, that transition that happened in America, where it before was like how good your toppings were on top of this shitty bread, but now this is reversed. Now it's not reversed, but now it's how do I make absolutely amazing fucking bread, and then top it with amazing toppings, right? Or some keeping it simple and let the whole thing kind of shine. So
I mean, it is a hot bread with topping, right? I mean, that's what it is. And so you've got to, anybody can order great cheese, great sauce, great topping, but you just can't dial up great dough. I think that's the important thing. So I love seeing these bakers now approaching pizza as opposed to just pizza makers. I really think about the bread first.
Right. I'm excited. I can't wait for the book then, because like even just last night I was craving some pizza at home, and I don't know. It's like I think the challenge for your average consumer is that there's just so many fucking options out there in Chicago. There's
well, there's a lot of mediocre stuff too.
Right.
I think, and a lot of people grew up on mediocre, and they think this is the best pizza, the only pizza. I talk about Peag syndrome in the book, Pizza I Grew Up Eating syndrome, and it's tricky because I get the loyalty for sure, but they've got to get out of the comfort zone. There's a lot of great new pizza places, and so the book is divided by style. And there's a whole section on slices. Because I think a lot of people don't realize we do have a slice culture here. It's not as big as New York, obviously, but you can get a good New York slice actually, by a Korean guy, actually. Jimmy's Pizza
Jimmy
Cafe,
Kang,
right?
man.
Right?
Big shout out to Jimmy's Pizza.
Yeah.
I discovered them years ago when I was living in Lincoln Square, and I just happened to order from this place because I walked by it and I was like, what the fuck? There's a Korean dude over here making pizza. And so I tried it out. I was like, this is fucking fantastic.
And
pizza.
beignets.
Yeah, the
right?
beignets,
It's amazing. So it's divided by that, which is great. And then I'm still doing pizza tours. We have Pizza City USA tours every weekend. We do 4 tours.
Oh, that's awesome.
Runs through October.
Yeah.
I really want to develop this in LA. I think we could do November through April when we're closed here.
Yes.
We could do Pizza City tours there because there's a lot of great pizza in LA now. Bologna's and there's a Joe's out there, and there's Triple Beam and Pizza Mozza and a lot of great pizza, Pisana. So we're going to think about that maybe in the winter if we can do that. And then the podcast, every other Friday I do Pizza City. We do pizza podcast. And so there's the pizza hat that I'm wearing, and then there's the consulting hat that I'm wearing, which is, when I left ABC in February, I was approached by Baum Realty, and they were like, we'd love to have you work with us and sort of help us with our culinary, because they got a lot of space to fill. And so I went and got my broker's license, which was kind of bizarre, having to study for real estate. But it's great because now I can participate in those deals. If I connect somebody as a New Yorker coming into Chicago or something, I can make those connections happen and actually get paid for my expertise.
Yeah. So how do you manage to juggle all of these things? You seem like an extremely busy man.
I don't sleep. I really don't sleep. I don't watch a lot of TV. I do binge a little bit. Funny, not to bring it back to Koreatown, but Kim's Convenience. Love that show. I love Kim's Convenience. My whole family is hooked on it. My daughter lives in Amsterdam. She's like, oh my God, you watched the new season already? It's so awesome. In the last season. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So my wife and I are watching it. And there was a great piece in the Times a couple weeks ago about the food in the series.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. How food plays such a role in the family dynamic.
Yeah.
In the family.
Our partner, binge watches Kim's Convenience.
Oh.
Alvin.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
It's so great. But, so I mean, that's like one exception, but I don't watch a lot of TV. And I just find I'm really efficient with my time.
Yeah.
I just don't waste a lot of time. I get up early. I work on projects. Like I'm going to Miami this week to finish shooting a video for Sub-Zero and Wolf Appliances,
Oh, wow.
which is so random. But I got connected to them. A friend of mine in Singapore does all the distribution for all their appliances in Southeast Asia. And so they were like, hey, we can't bring our chefs and clients to Madison to see the facility this year because of COVID. Could you drive up to Madison, it's 2 hours, shoot some video, interview the corporate chef, help us put together a couple of short videos we're going to post on social. I said, sure. So I do that, and the corporate chef is like, wow, you came up here by yourself? There's no crew of 10 people. Like, how do you do this? I'm like, well, during COVID, I had to, for ABC, shoot and edit all my own stuff. So he's like, this is fantastic. And so his boss ended up calling me a week later and saying, we've got a corporate video we need to get done in July. Can you go to 6 cities in like 2 weeks and interview all of our top retailers and put together a 3-minute video?
Insane.
I'm like, sure. So I'm going to go to Miami this week for that. So like this kind of stuff pops up now. Come on, first class, baby. No. It's in my rider.
Miles now, man. He's got the miles.
No, but I love getting to break out of that zone a little bit. And so while I'm down there, I'm going to go shoot a story at Sanguich de Miami on 8th, which is a great place for sandwiches, for my YouTube channel where I've been producing content every week. So
awesome.
Like everything kind of feeds into, as long as it's food related, it all kind of feeds into each other.
So one-man crew, how are you? We obviously can't do that here. How are you managing
Oh, you'd be surprised. I've upgraded during COVID. So when I was at ABC mid-COVID, they were like, look, we're not going to let you go. You got a contract here for another year almost, but you're going to have to figure out how to do this on your own because you can't come in. We're not going to send you a shooter. We can't send you. You can't work with an editor. Wow. And I had done all this in the past, right? So when my first jobs in TV, this is the good thing about starting small is you do everything yourself. Yeah. It's sort of like if one of your chefs called in sick, right? You could do everything, right? You could do everything in the kitchen, right? You could wash dishes. You could do everything.
There.
That's what we're doing there.
Right. So you have to be resourceful. So I upgraded my camera. I bought a Canon 5D Mark IV.
Dan, you taking notes on this? We're trying to lower our production costs here, looking for some sponsors.
I got a 2470 lens. I got a prime lens. I got Sennheiser mics. I bought some cheap LED lights that I can transport, and I got a little case. And I edit on Final Cut on my Mac.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so I've been putting together for the last year of ABC. All those stories were coming out of my house, and I was shipping them on WeTransfer to the producers, and they would just run them on the air. It was like. And I was doing live shots from the kitchen. Yeah. I set up a prompter and I set up everything in my kitchen, and it's nuts. So I'm by myself now.
That's awesome.
But that's how I'm getting jobs.
Yeah.
Because
You're resourceful.
I can charge a fair rate for me, and the companies are like, wow, this is really a reasonable rate. We can afford this too. So it's a good match.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So right now, I mean, making all this time and juggling this entire schedule, I mean, you also got to exercise. I mean, you've been eating this food and reporting it for all these years. Anything that you're like sticking to? What's your ride or die kind of like format? I mean, you said you biked here today. Is that your?
Yeah, so that's been helping me in the summertime for sure. Before COVID, it was Core Power Yoga. So when I did the pizza book, I worked out a deal with them in exchange for a credit in the book to get a discount on like unlimited yoga, because I did like every other day I was doing this yoga as a yoga sculpt class.
Yeah,
at
that's with the weights.
With the weights and the heat.
That's insane.
And so I can't do that with the mask. It's hard. It's hard. I like the heat though. I like to schwitz because Jews like to schwitz. So I did that quite a bit. But now since COVID, I've been just we have a trainer that does it remotely. Okay. She lives out in the suburbs, but we've been with her for 10 years. She was a private or personal trainer. Mm-hmm. So I do that once a week with her, which is tough in my house. And then I bike as much as I can, and I do a little like workouts and stuff with weights, but not a ton. But my whole thing is not to lose weight, but just not to gain it. So if I can just be even keel, you know,
just watching the meter.
And if I eat a lot, like on a Tuesday, I'll go really light on Wednesday. I'm just kind of sort of equilibrium. I'm always thinking about the balance.
Yeah. Got an interesting question for you. If you could travel back in time to your 18-year-old self, what are either 3 words you would say, or what's like
some advice
you'd give your younger self?
I would say don't give up, because it's very easy, like in my business, to say, oh, screw this, I want to go home and be with my family. That weeds out a lot of people in TV for sure. They're like, I miss Chicago, I want to go home, I miss my friends. My friends are getting married and having kids and buying cars and stuff. So I would say don't give up, because you just need to stay with it. And I'm glad I stuck with it. I would say just be relentless. You have to just you gotta out hustle everybody. You gotta outwork people. You gotta. I was producing stuff, like you guys are saying, you don't have a sponsor for this show. A lot of this is volunteer. That's like the story of my life, volunteer. I mean, asking people for favors, just we want to get something, produced. I want to get this on the air. Like I just produced a thing with a friend of mine from ABC, which will release a few weeks before the book comes out, kind of what is Chicago-style pizza. It's a 9-10 minute video on YouTube. It's a pilot for what we hope will be a little series about, Pizza City and other cities. But we did that on like a dime. We did like a no budget. We did a nothing. And we did it in a shoestring in a day. But that's the kind of stuff you have to be resourceful and relentless and just hustle. To out hustle everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, even just in our last episode, if that's like the same thing, right? I mean, Ed Tinoco was just like, I just had this drive. I had to he's the oldest in the family of his, on the kids.
Family of 20.
Yeah. And just like you just out hustle everybody, right? It's like that just no limit soldier mentality,
what no one else is willing to do. That's what it is.
Pretty much.
We're trying to bring that back. Me and Andy are trying to bring the whole no limit soldier thing. So shout out to Master P and that entire crew, No limit. I got an interesting thing here. So, I mean, you've been, food reporting and through all avenues. What is your what's your take on this new modern, the Instagram influencer, there's the shift from print to, iPhones.
TV, and then
that's essentially what it is.
I feel like it will sort itself out because people will see through the sort of veil of ads and sponsors and sort of not authentic. And so, my whole thing is always you guys know this. I show up, I order, I pay, I leave. And if I don't like it, I don't do a story on it. But if I like it, I call the guy back and we post stuff. I think a lot of the influencers, I think you see it's a lot of, even if they don't put the hashtag ad or hashtag sponsor, which they're supposed to, they're advertisers. They're getting paid or they're getting free meals to promote stuff. And yes, they got a ton of followers, but I just feel like if you can only cover places that are going to give you free meals or pay you, it's there's a problem. That's not a good model. So I sort of look at it from a distance. I don't comment on it. I don't like it. I just sort of watch it and go, interesting. Okay. Very pretty pictures, usually by young women mostly.
Very young.
Right?
Most of the people are very, very young.
Yeah, they're all young.
We've never been approached by a middle-aged.
Right. They're all in their early 20s. Here's the thing. So I know this from firsthand experience because I was at this tourism thing for Pizza City USA, and they had a Navy Pier, and so all these different potential Chicago tourist destinations. So as a tour company, we were there, and 2 young women came up to me and asked if they could collaborate. We'd love to collaborate with you.
That's the word they use.
So collaborate. What does that mean? What does that mean? So I tried to drill down and collaborate. So I'm going to give you a free tour, and you're going to post, 2 or 3 pictures about it. Okay, so is that worth my, what is my cost? I think about the overhead I have. If it's a bus tour, I need to make this much money, whatever. Our break even is maybe 7 people on a bus. So I'm always thinking about this stuff and collaborate. So I said, here's my card, give me a call. They never followed up, of course. But I don't know if I want to collaborate with them.
Right. I mean, I think to most people out there, they don't realize this. I think the general public doesn't know that the Instagram influencer and how this approach works. Now, there are levels to this, there are tiers to this. I remember, maybe we won't put any names out, but there was one specific person that really made it to the scene first. She was big time. And she had a huge following. And then next thing I knew, she's requesting $10,000 to get a post. And, but nowadays your average person on, anywhere under 75,000 followers, they're reaching out to the restaurant exactly like Steve just mentioned. And they're saying, hey, do you want to collaborate together? It's just another way of just saying, hey, can you give me a free meal at your restaurant and trade? And I felt very, I don't know what's the word, apprehensive in the beginning of all of this.
The problem in Chicago is there's not a lot of media covering food. That's the big problem. There's a lot of, you've read about it, and Vittel left, and Although now they got 2 critics at the Tribune, which is a good sign, but there's just a lot of people that are leaving the industry, or it's freelance, or they don't have the budget to do it, or right.
One of our favorite writers is leaving Chicago soon.
Yes.
So. I don't know if we should. I don't know if we should throw it out there.
It's Maggie.
That's okay.
Maggie Hennessy. She's
incredible.
Incredible, and so shout out to Maggie.
Yeah.
She'll be leaving, and that's just again, me and Andy were just like, fuck, another good writer.
Another one bites the dust.
Yeah.
Going to New York or where?
No, she said she's going out to.
I think the UP was it? No. That's
Arizona.
Right? Somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the wilderness.
Somewhere hot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hot and deserty. That's what she said.
No, it's too bad to hear another person's leaving who knows the market.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, we're definitely lacking in that, right? Like we were talking about that too. As soon as Phil Vitale and we just and then you too, like leaving ABC.
Yeah, when we heard you were leaving, we were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, what's going on?
This whole thing is, what would you like to see happen to food reporting, food reviewing? What would you, in an ideal world for you, what does that look like?
I think people working for publications that have the budget to spend on people's salaries and on dining budgets.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it boils down to. It's like giving people the freedom and the resources. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel obligated to cover anybody. Like you said, you get a free dessert or something. You're like, thank you very much, but that's not going to convince me to do a story here.
Right.
But having the dining budget to go out and eat, kind of have that freedom is important, and then having the outlet, like we call it, like the rails. Who's going to deliver my story? So right now the rails for me are YouTube, which is okay. I'm not making any money from it, but it's keeping my foot in the door.
Yeah.
Versus the rails of another TV station, which, like I said, could be happening at some point in the near future. That would be great because that is sort of a built-in audience, built-in distribution. Yeah. So having the ability to have somebody with a decent distribution who's committing to coverage, but then also committing to pay that person a living wage, and then to also give them the resources, which would be a budget to actually try food.
Yeah,
those are the sort of the 3 most important things, I think.
I'm shocked that it's not covered more because everyone eats, right?
Everybody eats, and we're all coming back to eat, right?
Yeah.
And so, I was like, I didn't understand. 7 wanted to change. I don't think they're going to hire a replacement for me. I think they're just getting rid of food coverage.
That's ridiculous.
But you're right. Crazy. People are coming back to eat, and it's the most people want to know where to go and what's going on, and so. I don't get it. New York has one committed food reporter at ABC.
Yeah,
wow.
we even have a hard time finding, not because the new
Speaking
place.
of the microphone, you got to.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. There you go.
Sorry, guys.
I got to give him some tips here. I mean, that's what I do
exactly.
for a living.
You got the experience.
I want to hear you.
Forgot what we were talking about.
Just food reporting. It's crazy. I think that Chicago's got such an amazing selection of food. It's got this diversity to it. I feel like as far as its recognition, I mean, that's a lot of what me and Andy are, trying to do here between this platform and the video series that we're going to start. We want to showcase the city. It's got an amazing food scene. I think it's up there with the best. I've traveled. We do New York. I've done San Francisco. Houston's great. I mean, some people shit on Houston's food, but I was like, that place is fucking awesome. It's a great food city. And, I just think that there's a lot to share, and there's a lot to put out there. But
we don't have a Jonathan Gold. We don't have Tejal Rao, who's covering L.A. now, or California for the New York Times.
Right.
We don't have those bureaus for those national publications, which drives me insane because you do see in the national magazines now. And I know Food and Wine has an editor here, Nina Friend, lives in Chicago, but I don't see enough Chicago coverage at all. For sure. And I see these places, in Atlanta and Houston and. Asheville, Portland,
Austin.
great. Those are great cities. I'm not taking nothing away from them, but Chicago, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to have more in those national prints, and
for sure.
It drives me crazy. We don't have more coverage that way.
Yeah.
So how does one get into this career path?
Oh, to food reports?
Yeah.
It's so funny. I'm teaching a class on food reporting now.
I noticed
at
that.
Medill at Northwestern, for 5 weeks. But I got 10 grad students.
Oh, really?
Some of them are interested in food. Some of them, it's so much funny. Like we're doing this. I took them to Argyle Street and we had
Some banh mi, right?
Banh mi.
Yeah.
And some of them were like, I just want the vegetarian. I want the vegan with the mango sauce.
Get the fuck out. That should be like a prerequisite to like food reporting. You got to have an open mind and an open palate.
I kind of said like we're gonna have pho. You got to get the beef. Get the pho duck bet. Get the sort of the house special. Yep. Well, I'll do the vegetarian broth. We had one of those. So I'm like, what?
That should eliminate you immediately from the.
That's what I wanted to say. Yeah. But anyway, so to get into the business, though, I would say you have to just, like you say, be willing to eat everything, anywhere, anytime, open-minded. And
you don't have to be Andrew Zimmern, but like eating like wild shit. But at least like try something.
You have to be open-minded. I mean, we ate crickets in Cambodia. We had stuffed frogs, and it was interesting.
Yeah, we just talked about that last episode. Yeah, she wasn't crazy about the crickets. She said it was like a like salt. It was just like a very intense,
like a shrimp chip.
Yeah.
In a way.
What's the strangest thing you've ever had?
Strangest thing.
Like the stuffed frogs.
I would say the Cambodia was pretty interesting. I mean, we had frogs that were stuffed with sausage.
Yeah.
We had fried beetles and crickets, and I mean the fried insects is kind of weird for me, I guess. Grasshoppers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just crispy, crunchy,
Tons
salty.
of protein, right?
Good protein, though. Yeah, it's a good source. Yeah. But I mean, to answer your question though, how to get into this, I would say you need to create clips. You need to have examples of your work to show that you've really done kind of some interesting work, like whether it's writing or broadcasting or video, to show other publications, even if it's just Vice Munchies, like you want to get on there, like just to show that you can. You got your chops. You kind of know what you're talking about. Because I think when you're 22, 23, you don't really know anything.
That's true.
And you need to go live somewhere and travel and and build up some food memories and taste memories. I mean, when I talked to my grad students, I was explaining. We went around the room. We asked where everybody was from and what they grew up eating, and I could riff on everyone from the girl who's from Taiwan to the girl who grew up in Miami on arroz con gandules. And, I could talk about everybody's cuisine because I'd either been to those countries or states or I'd experienced it in Chicago or, I had a point of reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that comes from a lot of experience, I think. So I think to be a food writer, you kind of need to be older. You need to have some lived experience.
No, for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
I mean, who's going to take like a 21-year-old girl that's like posting photos on fucking Instagram and, like no one's gonna take her serious,
70,000
I think,
followers.
But it looks pretty and it's all pastel colored.
Yep, absolutely. And
here's my melting cheese shot of my bulldog. Oh, this melted cheese.
the cheese pull.
People love that. They're
People
obsessed
love
with,
that shit.
They're like, oh my god, cheese pulls.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I think it's tough. I think it's also what do people want, right? I mean, I don't know. I think people are just getting. The lack of attention to sit down and read a beautifully written article that talks about technique and, a 5-day ferment and like trying to understand this stuff. I think the general public also is starting to lose sight of that. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. Everyone's attention span is like 15, 30 seconds. That's why TikTok is dominating. Nobody even wants to scroll through Instagram
But there
anymore.
were Lucky Peach had a big following, right?
Yeah,
and that was
they
pretty
did.
serious.
Yeah. I mean, but why did Mihan and Cheng, why did they stop that project?
Oh, they had a falling out. I think they had a problem.
Oh, those two.
Mian and they had a falling out.
I didn't know that.
What?
Yeah.
Weren't they on Ugly Delicious together recently?
They were on Ugly Delicious.
Was that the falling out?
It happened before then, but then Mian, of course, got a lot of trouble at the LA Times.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Oh yeah, just Google his name in LA Times.
Well,
he was asked to leave.
Well, what's like the short on the story, if you don't mind sharing it?
He was accused of like sexual harassment of some employees on the food section,
Oh my God.
and also just being a tyrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. You can kind of see it in the personality on his like shorts when he's like talking on camera.
He was also living in New York City, editing the LA Times food section. It's a
That's-
little tricky
yeah.
to do that for long distance. I
Well,
think.
they're still doing that, right? Doesn't someone from the New York Times right now currently do editing for the? Is that how it works? I know.
Well, no, they have an LA.
They have a segment,
they have a bureau.
a section or something. No?
Yeah, they have a California section. They have a California critic from the New York Times.
Got it.
But no, the LA Times, which used to be owned by the Tribune,
Oh wow, I
which
didn't know
left.
that.
Yeah, where the owner, the Patrick Sung-shin, the billionaire, took it now private or for himself. But they had Peter Meehan was editing the food section from living in New York and back and forth.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
I have a question about ABCs.
Okay.
What led to the leaving of
Yeah. Why did you
your
leave?
18-year
So
program?
they wanted to go. They told me a month before my renewal, which would have been in February, that they wanted to go in a different direction, that they didn't see the value of the coverage anymore, and they weren't going to renew me.
That's terrible.
So I said, okay.
Is that pretty dirty as far as like the timing they gave you?
No, not at all. No, and they could not have been nicer to me. They were so generous to me. Honestly, they gave me a package. I mean, they did more than they needed to do or had to do. Yeah, so I'll never say anything bad about that place.
They should have, you know.
17 years is an awesome run.
Dude, I honestly can tell you, as a Chicagoan growing up here, you know, when I think of ABC7, it's synonymous with the Hungry Hound.
It's like you and Linda Yu.
That's it.
That's what I think of.
Seriously.
Yeah.
By the way, walk into a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown with Linda Yu sometime with the Hungry Hound. It's amazing. It's like Charlton Heston, you know, parting the seas in the Ten Commandments. Oh my God! First of all, they're like, you know, Linda Yu is like, you know, the goddess, the empress, and then they're like, oh, and Hungry Hound too. So there's like food and culture and Chinese together. It's like, holy shit! Yeah. So that's always fun when that happens.
Yeah, I remember when Linda's sitting in our dining room. People around her are just like, holy shit, that's Linda Yu over there. Like, they like ask me, I'll stop by, I'll drop some food off. I'm like, hey, I've got their beautiful blah, 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 blah. They don't even give a fuck about the food now. They're just like, hey, is that Linda Yu over there? And I'm just like, what about the Brussels sprouts I just put down? But yeah, it is her.
And loves to eat. Yeah. Eats the cheeks, eats the eyeballs, and, you know, eats. I've seen her eat a chicken bone, like down to the bone. Yeah. She's awesome. But and then at the same time, I was like, you know, I needed a push because I'd been talking for the last 2 years, like, you know, I can see the writing on the wall with local media, and I need to get my own business going. I need to do my consulting. I need to do something that has longevity because local news, I'm not sure, you know, I just see the trend. It just, you know, the numbers are getting lower and lower. But I do like the ability to keep producing content, and I love food in Chicago, and so I'm trying to find a way to keep it going. And like I said, I can't say anything now, but I think in the next few weeks you'll probably hear something from me about it. Oh yeah, looking forward to it. So yeah, but that's why we left. It's just like I'd done my time. You know, in TV, it's every 2 years you get renewed typically. Oh, interesting. So I always have a 2-year contract. It's never a long term, at least for freelancers.
Like a state senator.
That's the Tampa Bay model. Tampa Bay Buccaneers model right there.
And they have to give you like a month's notice. So everything was done above board, and they were great about it. And they let me really go out on my own terms. And so I said, I want to do I want to serve out my contract through February and do all my stories that I normally would. And they were like, fine, great. They could not have been nicer.
Awesome.
Can I ask you a question about pizza?
Anything.
So what is... Like, this is a debate, too. What's Chicago-style pizza?
Ooh.
So Chicago-style pizza is actually 3 parts to that answer. Yeah. So when someone asks you what that means, there's tavern style, which is the thin and crispy square-cut bar pies that were born in the 30s and 40s. Okay, that's a Chicago style. There's deep dish, which was started in 1943 at Pizzeria Uno, which at the time was called the Pizzeria, but became Uno's in 55 when they opened up Dewey's down the street.
I did not know that.
And
they
was
were the first.
Done in a shallow pan, not a huge pan, but it was basically a reverse build. And in New York, they call it upside down. It was dough, cheese, and then sauce and topping. Yeah. That cheese protects the bottom layer of dough from getting soggy and soft. But they weren't 8 inches high. That came a little bit later in the 60s from an African-American woman named Alice Mae Redmond from Mississippi. She couldn't get the dough to press out when she started working at Gino's East from the original recipe from Dewey's. So she added fat to it, added some oil, like a short biscuit dough recipe. That's where we start getting these larger, heftier slices in the mid-60s. And then there's stuffed, which is a third style, sort of a subcategory of deep dish, started in 1971 at a place called Nancy's on the northwest side. And this is a guy, Rocco Palese from Italy, didn't want to do deep dish like everybody else was doing in 71 because Pequod's, My Pie, Lou Malnati's all opened in 71.
Wow.
He's like, I want to do something different. I want to do that Easter pie, that pizza rustica from Italy, which was stuffed with salami, eggs, and cheese. And so instead of that, he would do mozzarella, sausage, or whatever topping, and then a second layer of dough across the top, and then the sauce on top of that. That's the above-ground outdoor pool. That's the boat anchor. That's the Jon Stewart rant people talk about is the stuffed pizza. Yeah. It's got that second layer of dough. The problem with that is that when you remember I said with the deep dish, the reason you're putting that bottom layer of dough down is to protect it. Well, with the second layer of dough that's being sandwiched between sauce and cheese, it's always going to be gummy and chewy and soft. It's not going to have that sort of firmness to it. I think that's a major pitfall of that. It's also what I call OBR, optimal bite ratio.
I love that.
It goes against, it defies OBR because it's too much, right? It's a mouthful of cheese, a mouthful of crust. So that started in 71, but then Giordano's, two employees from Nancy's left in like 73 or something, and then opened up Giordano's on the south side in 74. So they claimed to created stuff, but it was actually created by Nancy's in 71. So those are the three Chicago-style pizzas: Tavern, Deep, and Stuffed.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Thank you for
That's
that.
your question?
I actually, 100%. I actually never,
insightful.
grew up here in Chicago. I've never thought about stuffed pizza.
Nobody does. Everybody
Right.
thinks Giordano's is deep dish. It is stuffed is a subcategory of deep. It is not the same as deep.
Interesting.
So, Pequods then is a deep dish.
They call it a deep pan.
Deep pan.
So deep dish, I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but deep dish typically is the dough is pinched up along the inner walls, like you see at My Pie or Lou Malnati's.
Malnati's, okay.
There's a little high wall at the edge, right? It's maybe an inch high,
Yeah.
and in the middle is about 5/8 of an inch in the center. So with a deep pan, the dough is typically panned out. It's proofed overnight, and then they pan it out, and they let it just go to the edges of the pan.
Yeah.
There's
Got
no
it.
pinching on top of it.
Oh, okay.
It's just a pan pizza, and it's in a deep round pan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a deep pan. So Burt Katz, who started Pequods, called it as a deep pan pizza, not deep dish.
So
Wait,
Bert
so I
started
thought Bert- yeah.
Pequods and
Yes.
then opened Bert's.
Yes, he sold Pequods in like 86, and
thought it
then
was the other
3
way
years
around.
later he opened up Bert's around the corner.
Yeah.
Got it.
Oh man.
That's
They always
interesting.
had that frico, that crispy cheese edge, which I have no proof of this, but I'm convinced that Bert got the idea from Detroit style, because Detroit started
Yeah.
in 46.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
he could have been going to Zingerman's for pastrami sandwiches or going to
Yeah,
Ann
yeah.
Arbor or something and seeing
Yeah.
Detroit style.
For sure.
And then I saw all of a sudden in 71 at Pequods, they start doing that crispy edge.
So
Jeez.
who has the best pizza? Detroit, Chicago, New York?
Tough question, because the styles are so
What
different.
about Italy? I mean, you're not gonna throw Italy in that mix?
Well, Detroit's one style, right?
Yeah.
Sort of that
Yeah.
soft focaccia, crispy edge, crispy bottom, undercarriage. Chicago is 3 styles of pizza, right? And New York is, well, there's slices and squares. They've got Sicilian squares in New York, also grandma squares, which are thinner, crispier Sicilians, but then also the traditional wedges like Jimmy's doing here in Chicago.
Brooklyn style.
Yeah, Brooklyn style. So who makes the best? I don't think anybody makes the best. I get tired of that question because it's hard. It's like, who's your favorite kid? I don't have a favorite kid. They're all unique. They're all
Who's your favorite kid, Steve?
they're all they're all really interesting. I mean, they're all. I can't say one is better than the other. I really can't. I mean, to be honestly, I just can't. It's not a political answer. It's
I like
just
that
that
answer.
they're all different.
it's
So
true.
I love going to New York and eating pizza for a weekend.
Right.
I've been to about 74 or 5 places in New York now. Before the first book came out, I went to 58 places in New York just so I could cover all that ground and say, I've got the street cred. I'm legitimate now, and I've tasted the pizzas. Most pizzas in New York are 2 styles. It's basically the wedge slice or the Sicilian.
Yeah.
A subcategory would be grandma. That's pretty much it. There's some Neapolitan, there's some artisan,
What's
Neapolitan.
grandma?
Grandma is a thinner, crispier Sicilian. So done in the same rectangular pan, but no overnight proofing. So
Interesting.
dough made in the morning, baked that day.
Yeah.
Because grandma ain't got no time to wait for dinner, right? Grandma's got to get dinner on the table. So really, you proof it, you bake it, you top it that day. It's a thinner, crispier.
I've never heard of grandma style.
Oh, it's all over New York City. It's one of my favorite styles because the ratio is amazing. The only place you can OBR, optimal bite ratio. Professor Pizza, up next to the Metro, is working out of, I forgot the name of the bar. He does grandma style pizzas out of there.
Okay.
It's right next. Look up Professor Pizza.
Professor Pizza.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah, we talk about we didn't come up with OBR, but I love that. Are you coining that? That's going to be a.
I tried to.
That's a trademark?
I tried to trademark it or copyright it. I couldn't. I asked an attorney. I couldn't do it.
Oh wow!
'Cause I think it's
you
brilliant.
should. The thing it is
It's
brilliant
so smart.
because we talk about OBR, but without mentioning OBR. So like when we talk about burgers, we're always like the meat to bun ratio is just completely off, right?
Yeah.
But I like just the umbrella of OBR. Now we can just kind of have a number on that.
It's
right?
the same thing with tacos.
Yes.
I don't want to eat like 2 stacked corn tortillas with a little bit of filling. I want to have maybe
agree.
1 tortilla. I don't need to serve 2
Flour or
tortillas.
corn.
So I heard a rumor about this. The bottom tortilla is actually to catch what drops from the first tortilla, and then you get a second small snack.
Interesting. I did not know that.
That's
Also,
what-
when you go to pick it up, you actually
just grab
leave.
the, yeah. It's like a plate.
I've been doing this shit wrong the whole
your
time.
whole life.
Oh, you leave one tortilla on the table.
You know what?
gotta ask
I'm
Nick.
not certain
Yeah.
about this.
I'm going to ask Nick
You're gonna get-
Kindlesberger about that.
You're gonna get lashed
Nick would
out on
know.
this.
But see, I don't like out of the package, the corn tortillas. Again, I'm a snob. I like it freshly made.
Of course.
Big
Yeah.
textural difference
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
getting the one out of the package.
So when you're eating tortillas at home or tacos, are you making them fresh?
If I can, yeah. I've got a
Really?
tortilla press. I go to that place on 26th Street, is a Totonilco. I get the masa.
Yeah.
It's super easy to press it out and griddle it. I got a
Yeah,
flat
true.
griddle at my house.
And they're so much better.
So
World
much
Oh,
better.
fresh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
no
There's
comparison.
no
Yeah.
argument there.
But yes, flour or corn.
I do like, yeah.
Well, if I'm in Sonora, if I'm in the desert, I would do flour. You know, it depends if you're going to have like a Tucson taco, you get flour. If you're going to be anywhere else, I typically like corn though. I
Yeah.
like fresh corn. Yeah, I'm a corn freak. Actually, my family will tell you this because I grew up in Minnesota where corn's big in August. I can eat 4 ears of corn like nobody's business. 4 ears, just boom, 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 boom.
What's your technique?
When I, it's like the typewriter, it's like back and forth. When I see corn on the menu, like if it's a corn cake or a Johnny cake or it's a corn salad, it's
Yeah.
like I
You
get
have
that
to
in
get it.
corn soup. I'm automatically all about corn. I
Wow.
just love corn.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know. So yeah, corn lovers are obsessed with corn.
Yeah.
I do elote pizzas at home. I can do like with the Kewpie mayo and the
Yeah.
fresh cilantro
Oh, yeah.
and
There you go.
cayenne. It's a great pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, do you cook a lot?
I do. Yeah. I've been cooking a lot more vegetarian, which is awesome.
Oh, interesting.
I look at recipes in the food magazines or something, but I did like a charred cabbage the other day with a tahini sauce and black sesames. I'm really into the whole roasted cauliflower now.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll char it really hard, and then I'll make like a jus, and I'll make like a tahini again.
Yeah.
And then top it with fresh herbs or fresh parsley. I like to cook.
Yeah. Any stand-up, like, particular books that you really like cooking out of?
I've been doing the Peter Reinhardt, the Perfect Pan Pizza a lot recently, just to understand doughs better, which I think is great. You know, I like Paul Kahn's work. The Publican book is great. I think Paul is super, super talented, and just doesn't get as much credit nationally as he deserves. And just also just one of the nicest guys in the world, and so low key, and could care less about media and press and stuff. But super talented. Used to work for Bayless, you know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, worked for Tupolobampo.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, his book is great.
Cool. I wouldn't do. We're gonna do this one quick activity. It's called This or That.
Okay.
All right. So just real quick, short answers. We can dive into it a little bit depending on time. I know we're kind of like cutting it here. So here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So cats or dogs?
Neither.
Ooh, love that.
I'm
Beach?
allergic, but I would, if gun to my head, dogs.
Yeah. All right. I hate cats too. Beaches or mountains?
Ooh, mountains.
I love that. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Ooh, sorry.
We gotta do a writer request
It
next
used to
time.
be
you know?
coffee, but the Asian in me has become more
Yeah.
green tea.
That's awesome. TV shows or movies?
Movies. I like the immersive experience.
Yeah.
All right, let's come back to that one real quick if we got time. Rice or pasta?
Rice.
Love that. Pizza or burger?
Pizza. I mean, come on. Now, pizza or Korean would be tricky.
There you go. Window seat or aisle?
Aisle.
All right. Thin crust or deep dish?
Thin.
All right.
Yeah, I can eat more.
Coke or Pepsi?
Neither, but I mean, again, gun to my head, probably Coke. If it's Mexican Coke, I would do, with the sugar cane, not with the artificial.
I like that. Call or text?
Text.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's more immediate.
We should get back on that one. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Eat alone at a bar or order in?
Alone at a bar.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Taking the scene.
Yeah.
Talk to people.
Travel to the past or travel to the future?
Future.
Oh,
Yeah.
I want to dive into that.
Unless I can go back and actually change the outcomes, but I think I'd like to see the future.
Interesting. And last one, an hour early or an hour late?
Early. Always early. Bourdain always said 15 minutes early is on time.
Yes.
Right. That's a Vince Lombardi thing too, by the way. Shout out to Green Bay Packers. Awesome. Anything you want to dive in on those questions there? Anything specific?
Well, we are coming up on
Yeah.
our.
Yeah. So let's give Steve a little platform here. Tell us about, real quick, what you're up to. What I guess what you can share that you're up to, And where can people find out more about you? Instagram, website, all of that
Yeah,
jazz.
easiest thing is just stevedolinsky.com. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm at Steve Dolinsky on my social media. I was very clear about this early on. I didn't want to be Steve Dolinsky ABC7 or Steve ABC or Steve TV or whatever.
yeah.
It's just my name.
Yeah.
It's always easy to find me. Steve
Right.
Dolinsky on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on my website. And then there's the pizza hat that I wear, which is Pizza City USA.
All right.
And that's also Pizza City USA and Insta and .com
Yeah.
and whatever. And that's all our tours and the podcast and book stuff.
Very cool.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much for
you so
being
much.
here
My
today.
pleasure, guys. This
It's,
is
yeah.
great.
This was such a great, insightful, amazing conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
I could talk to you for hours
Yeah.
about like so you're when you're learning about pizza now you're learning about high hydration
Yeah.
and you know
Yeah.
and I'm obsessed with that. Like I'm trying to get into some sourdough bread making. That's like my new shit now.
The
So.
cool thing about what we all do is that we never stop learning.
Yes.
Right.
We're always learning every day, which is so much fun about
Absolutely.
our jobs.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Steve.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
We say, not 안녕하세요. We say it's 감사합니다.
Oh yeah.
감사합니다.
Yeah.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for checking us out. Tune in next time on our next episode. Peace.